Welcome back to the NextJS coding blog. In this video, we'll focus on nested dynamic routes. In the previous video, we solved the problem of dynamic routes where we have dynamic blog posts, and these are generated dynamically based on the name of our MDX file. Now we want to do a similar thing for my coding blog I'm creating. I want to have blog posts section, but additionally I also want to have some coding snippets, like a smaller section here. And the idea is I'm going to have a learn folder, and then within the learn folder you can have multiple resources you can learn. So you can have Node here, for example, or you can have, say, TypeScript, for example. And we can see that we're generating our posts in a similar way. But to be able to achieve this, we're going to have some adjustments to our code. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to do is we want to open up our project, and we can see where we've set our blogs here. We have this articles folder, and then just one level in we have our MDX files relating to the articles folder. So I want to do a similar sort of thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new folder here, and I'm just going to call this learn. And then nested within the learn section, I'm going to have two more folders, and I'm going to add more and more as the resources grow. But let's say initially we want to have a TypeScript folder, and then we have our contents relating to TypeScript. So I'm just going to have a file here called introduction. And I also want to have another folder, and let's just say this is called Node. And then I also want to have a file in here called introduction. And that's how we're able to route to the /learn/node or /learn/TypeScript/introduction slug. Now the good thing about Next is it sort of does this for us, and if we were just going to that one route, that would indeed work. However, we need to do this dynamically. So so these are our markdown files. So in pages we're going to have the same sort of structure here. So in pages we're going to have a section, and like we got a section called blog, we're going to have a section called learn. And then this is where we can have our dynamic folder here, or our next level in. We can have something here, we can have a folder, and then we're just going to use the square brackets to indicate that this is going to be dynamically rendered, this part of the URL. So what we'll put here is we'll just put the topic, because we're going to have /learn/ whatever the topic is. So that could be TypeScript or something like that. And then nested in here, we're going to have our dynamic slug. And actually, as a starting point, we can copy the dynamic slug from the blog section, and then we can just paste it in here just as a starting point. And what we can start to work on here is just adjusting it to make it so that the topics, the code snippets section on the topics is just a little different to the blog post. So we won't have this blog header component, that's unique to the blog post section. Now all of this stuff here, this is syntax highlighting. We'll keep all this sort of stuff, and perhaps later on we'll refactor things. Now here where we got article, we're going to rename this, and we're going to rename it to learn. So I also just want to copy over the example markdown files. So for the node stuff, I'm just going to copy in this article here. So I've got in the metadata, or the front matter, I got the topic. So introduction to TypeScript types. it's in the TypeScript section, and then it's part 1. And I'm going to use these parts later on so we can generate our navigation and have them ordered and stuff like that. And then of course you've seen this code syntax highlighting from the previous video. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that in the TypeScript folder. And then I'm just going to do the same thing for the node folder. I'm just going to copy something in here. I just got creating a basic server, and it's going to have the same metadata, of course. So now that we have those 2 files, we can begin to work on our nested dynamic routing for those files. And of course we're going to need to make a few adjustments to our code. So first things first, let's just go into the get static paths function. And what we need to do is, rather than referencing the articles directory, we can reference the learn directory. So I'm just going to do a Control D on the first 3 and then change that to learn directory. So now we're looking in this section here from the root of the project in the learn folder, where we have our nested folder topics and the markdown files associated with that topic. So we're just going to need to we need the ability to read all of those topics. So each of the topics is going to have its own directory with its own files associated with it. So what we'll do here is we'll just say, we'll have a constant variable, and we'll just say this is the topic directories, and we can do this by accessing the file system and just pretty much doing this stuff here. So we got that there. So we're in the learn folder, and we're going to have an array of strings. If you hover over this, you get the type inference of the names of each of the folders. So we're going to have node and TypeScript. And then what we want to do is we just want to loop through each of those, and then add the slug to the get static paths property that we're returning. So what I'll do before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and define something here. So I'm just going to have all of the paths, and we'll set this equal to the return type that we got here. But actually we want to add on, so we'll get the type from here. So the paths is all this sort of stuff here. And actually I want the type of params where it looks more like this. And that's going to be nested within another object. So what we can do is we can say we want to get the params back, and we want to get the slug back, which is a string, but we also want to get the topic back because we'll need that as well. In the first case we only needed the slug because there wasn't a nested folder, but we're going to need the name of the nested folder as well. So let's go ahead and get that. And this is going to be an array of these. So we can just have that syntax there and then initially set it to an empty array. So now we have our structure for our all paths data structure. We can go ahead and we can use the topic directories, and we want to, for each of those, what we want to do is, and I might actually just delete this, it's just sort of getting in the way at this point. But what we can start by doing is we can say for each, so actually I'll do a for each loop here. And I'm just using ES7 snippets. And I can just go ahead and put in the topics directories there. And then I'll just tab over And then for each topic or main section that we're dealing with here, which is just a string, so that's just Node, TypeScript or something like that, we want to loop through all of those, and then we want to get the directory and then all of the files in that directory, and then push those files to this all paths data structure that we've created, and then return that, and then we'll have our get static paths function generating all of the paths that we need, which we'll make use of in get static props. So let's do that. So we can start off by just having a variable here. We'll call it topic directories, or directory, or singular. And we can just use the path, and then we can go ahead and join. Now we've already got the path to get to the learn directory. So what we can do is we can just use that, and then we can just tack on the topic that we're in for that particular topic. And then what we can do is we can have files here, set that equal to fs, read file, read dir sync. We're going to need to do another read dir sync, and then another iteration of the for each. So we can just go ahead and put in the topic directories here. The singular, the topic directory. And now we have access, now we're in a folder. So on the first iteration, let's say we're in the node folder, we're going to loop through all of the files in there, and then we're going to just sort of amend the name of the slug, and then that's what we'll return and push to our all paths function, data structure. So let's do that. So let's do another for each loop, and we'll do that on the files. And for each folder that we're in, we're going to grab the files, and for each one of those files we'll have the file name here, which is a string, and then we can just set a path here, and we're going to tack on the params. That's what we're expecting back. So we're going to have the topic, which is nothing more than just the topic, and we're going to have the slug, which is the file name. So you grab the file name from here, so introduction.mdx, and then you just go ahead and you just replace the .mdx part with an empty string. That's assuming you want to do it this way, where you base off the name of the file. And then after we've looped through all of those, we can come to the end of this for each, nested for each here, or the outer for each, and we can just say, the nested for each, and then we can say all paths. We can just go ahead and push, and I might just go ahead and push that path. And then finally, in the return here, we want to return paths as all paths. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So just to recap what we did there, we're looking in the learn folder, and then unlike the blog folder or the articles folder where the files are directly in there, we have a nesting. So we've broken it down into sections within the learn folder, and then we're looping through all of those folders within the learn folder, and then for each folder that we're looping through, we're going to loop through all the files pertaining to that topic, and then we're just building up the all of the slugs that were the topic in the slug that we're returning. So now we have that, we'll be able to make use of that. So just here, we've got this get static props here. And now, because we've returned all of the paths here, and it has this topics here in this params here. Now when we do the destructuring, we've got the params, we're also going to have the topic and the slug. So we'll have this here. This would be learn. So once again, for our get static props, we're able to get the individual file that we're referring to, and for each individual file that we've got as a static prop, we can get the file. So sorry, based on the data structure that we have here for all the files, we've gone through all the files, we'll remove the MDX file. Now we want to render that particular MDX file, so we're going to need to tack on the MDX back onto there, and this is happening for each of the params. So what we can do, we have this learn property here, or this learn variable here, and then you can just say it's going to be learn, but we're also going to have another level here where we're just going to have the topic. That's why we needed the topic, and then the slug, and then .mdx, and then this stuff here remains the same. We're extracting the metadata and the content, and then we're going to serialize it and then return those props with the MDX source. So that source is going to be the same here. We're having that as a prop here, and we're destructuring that. We're inferring the static prop type, and then we're just calling this use effect where we're highlighting it. And then the width here is just going to be the same. We'll come back to the styling later on. But one thing to note is, well, what I found just doing this npm run dev is sometimes it can be slightly slow, and you don't really have to concern yourself with that at all, because when we build the project, everything will be like a static file, and it'll be fast. And I just want to demonstrate that. So in this package JSON here, where we've got this build, we can come here and we can just say nn next export. So we can go ahead and we can run the npm run build here, and this will take a 20-30 seconds, maybe a minute or so. We'll get a couple of warnings here, and we'll come back to those. But right now we just want to serve this up. So there's a package we can use, and we can run an npm install globally serve. Now I've already got that, so I'm not going to do that. But this package, what it allows us to do is it allows us to serve up our application. So our bundled application. Let's just take a look at what that means. So I've run the build command, I've exported it, and I've tacked on this because we're exporting a static website. So you can have a look here, and you see that there's this out folder here. So we've got our index page and our 404 page. And then we also got our blog here, where we've got the HTML versions of it that have been rendered. So we can just take a look at that. We can see that it's been condensed, and also we got our images and stuff like that. And then next.js, it's what it does is it attaches all of the logic, like switching dark mode and all of the JavaScript and all that sort of stuff, routing and stuff like that, and it embeds that into our pages. So you can just click on a page essentially, and it'll just load straight away. It's just like loading HTML. And then that's the main benefit of Next.js, is because you're rendering HTML, You get all the SEO benefits from the web crawlers and stuff like that. And it's also, once it's built, it's quite fast as well. So with that said, we can actually just go ahead and we can run this command here, npx serve, there's a -s, and in this output directory, we just want to run it from here, and then it'll automatically detect the index, and then it'll build it up from there. And then we can say /p for the port number, and let's just put this on port 4000, just to have a difference between the 3000 that we would be here on localhost if we were on that. So I'm going to go to localhost 4000 this time, and we can see that we've got our page here. This is some stuff we've done before. You can just load a blog post, and you can see that it loads a lot faster, and all the functionality still works. So let's go to one of these, learn/TypeScript/introduction, just to make sure that this is working. So I'm just going to close this here, and then just tack on this here. So for whatever reason, the server npx serve isn't working for this nested route for some reason. But if we go to the home page and look at one of our blogs, for example, we can see that it pretty much loads straight away. So let's just go ahead and go back to our npm run dev just to check everything's working okay. And we should note that there's no reason why this shouldn't work. It's probably to do with the nested routes from the serve package rather than a problem with NextJS or anything like that, because this logic here is very similar to the what's it called, the blog section. We're not using anything that we haven't used, like the backend stuff like path and fs and stuff like that, and we're just more or less just doing the same thing, just with an extra iteration in a loop. So let's just go ahead and come to our page here. We can see localhost 3000, that works. Come to the node one, and yeah, it just takes a couple seconds to load, but then it eventually loads. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this video, the nested dynamic routes. So in the next video, I want to start building things up. I want to have a sidebar here where you have the different sections you can choose from. I want to have a table of contents. I also want to have the pages where you can select the different categories. So if you're in a blog, for example, or you can see all the blog posts, and then I also want to be able to filter on those, filter on tags and all those sorts of things. So I'm going to start building all of those things in this series. So if you're excited for that, please subscribe to my YouTube channel to follow along. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.